The desert sun beat down mercilessly on the cracked earth. A tiny figure lay huddled in the meager shade of a withered Joshua tree. This was Maya, no more than 7 years old. Her clothes were torn and dusty, her face streaked with dirt and tears. Her parents, desperate and driven mad by thirst and hunger, had left her. They had told her they would return, but the vast emptiness of the desert whispered a different story. They had abandoned her in the dirt. The vultures circled overhead, their shadows a grim promise. Maya coughed, her throat parched, her small body weak. She closed her eyes, the heat and the hopelessness pressing down on her. A distant sound broke the silence, the steady rhythm of hooves. A lone rider approached, a figure silhouetted against the blinding sun. This was Caleb. He was a broken man, haunted by a past he couldn't outrun. His face was etched with weariness, his eyes held a distant sadness. He rode the edges of the world, avoiding towns, avoiding people, preferring the company of the wind and the stars. He was a man who knew loss, who understood the sting of abandonment. He saw her, a small, motionless form in the vast expanse of the desert. He dismounted slowly, his movements stiff with age and the weight of his burdens. He approached cautiously, his hand resting on the worn leather of his gun holster, but his eyes held no threat. He knelt beside her, his gaze gentle. Maya stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked at him, fear and confusion warring in her gaze. Caleb didn't speak. He simply reached out a calloused hand, his touch surprisingly gentle, and brushed a strand of hair from her little face. He offered her his canteen. She drank greedily, the water reviving her. Caleb watched her, his expression unreadable. He saw the desperation in her eyes, the utter vulnerability. He knew that look. He had worn it himself. He lifted her carefully into his arms. She was light as a feather, her small body trembling. He held her close, a strange protectiveness rising within him. He hadn't held a child in years, hadn't allowed himself to feel anything for anyone in even longer. But this small, abandoned girl stirred something within him, a long dormant ember of compassion. He carried her to his horse, a sturdy, weathered paint. He settled her in front of him, holding her securely. He turned his horse away from the setting sun, away from the direction her parents had taken, and towards the faint promise of a distant town. The journey was long and arduous. Caleb rationed his water and food, ensuring Maya had enough. He shielded her from the harsh sun, wrapped her in his worn jacket against the cold desert nights. He didn't speak much, but his presence was a constant comfort. He would hum soft, wordless melodies, the only sounds that broke the silence. Slowly, Maya began to trust him. She would lean against him, her small hand clutching his shirt, her fear gradually replaced by a fragile sense of safety. She would look up at him, her eyes searching his face, trying to understand this silent, broken man who had plucked her from the dirt. When they finally reached a small, dusty town, Caleb didn't leave her at the edge, as he usually did. He rode straight into the center, his presence drawing curious, wary glances. He stopped in front of the general store, dismounted, and lifted Maya down. He bought her new clothes, soft and clean. He bought her food, not dried jerky and hardtack, but fresh bread and fruit. He sat with her as she ate, his gaze protective. He didn't explain himself to the townsfolk, didn't offer any justification. He simply acted, his actions speaking louder than any words. He found a small, clean room at the edge of town, paying for it with the few coins he had left. He settled Maya in, tucking her into the soft bed. He sat beside her, his hand resting on her small shoulder. "Rest," he said, his voice rough but gentle. "You're safe now." Maya looked at him, her eyes filled with a gratitude that transcended words. She reached up and touched his face, her small fingers tracing the lines etched by hardship and sorrow. Caleb closed his eyes, a tear escaping and tracing a path through the dust on his cheek. He had lifted her from the dirt, not just physically, but emotionally. He had given her a chance, a future. And in doing so, he had begun, slowly, to lift himself as well. The broken man had found a purpose, a reason to keep moving, a reason to hope, and the abandoned little girl had found a protector, a father figure, a new beginning in the arms of a stranger who understood, perhaps better than anyone, the sting of being thrown away. Life in the dusty town settled into a quiet rhythm. Caleb, true to his nature, didn't shed his solitary ways entirely, but now his solitude was chosen, and it always led him back to Maya. He took on odd jobs around town, his quiet competence earning him respect, just enough for their needs. Maya blossomed under his care. The haunted look in her eyes faded, replaced by innocent curiosity. She would follow him like a shadow, her small hand often finding his. Caleb taught her to read the constellations and the quiet language of the desert. They'd sit outside their humble room, whittling small animals from wood scraps. The townsfolk, initially wary, accepted them. They saw the life return to Maya's eyes, and Caleb's quiet dedication. The story of the abandoned child and the broken man became a local legend, a testament to unexpected kindness. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in deep gold, Maya, in a new dress, sat on the porch step. Caleb sat beside her. "Caleb," Maya asked softly, "are you still broken?" He turned his head, his gaze meeting hers, seeing no judgment. He thought of the pain he'd carried, and how lifting her had felt like lifting a burden from his own soul. A slow, genuine smile, rare on his lips, spread across his face. He gently ruffled her hair. "Not any more, little one," he rumbled. "Not any more." He leaned back, watching the last sliver of sun disappear. The desert night no longer felt empty. He had found a new life in caring for a child who had been thrown away. And in her innocent love, the broken pieces of his own heart had finally begun to mend.